What's up, guys? This is Pink Across. Today I'm going to be trying out Smogon's newest tier, Uber's UU. This is now recognized as an unofficial metagame with a playable ladder on Showdown. So how this tier works is exactly like UU works to OU. So this does not fall in with the main line of UU, OU, Ubers. Uber's UU is not in between OU and Uber's. It is rather a branch off, meaning what is legal and banned in Uber's UU is based on usage in Uber's. So something like Iron Treads, which is popular in the Uber's tier for being able to check Miraidon, would be banned, whereas something like Palafin would be legal. So this is not directly in the chain of UU, OU, Ubers, but rather its own separate branch. The bans of what is and isn't allowed in Uber's UU will be based on usage and bans, exactly like it is between OU and UU. So far, the Uber's UU Council has decided to make three main bans. Various forms of Arceus, Basculegion Female, and Shaman. Shaman proved to be too much with Serene Grace and Air Slash. Basculegion Female was too strong with Last Respects, even though it was weaker than the male counterpart. And Arceus forms of Water, Steel, Flying, Electric, and Ghost were deemed to be too powerful. If you'd like to try this tier out for yourself, it will be under the Other Metagames tab right there. With the help of Kind Squared, one of the Uber's UU tier leaders, I was able to build a team and get ready to face off in a best of 3 against 2 of the other tier leaders. Let me explain the team before we get into the battles. Due to how valuable removal is, Great Tusk is decently common in Ubers, making it banned from Uber's UU. Iron Treads is also unavailable. So a lot of common options for hazard control are gone. The most popular option used in Uber's UU is Cyclizar. You sometimes see Cinderace, but the main one is Cyclizar. So right away, I was really excited to build a hazard stack team along with a Gholdengo. I started off with by far the best spikes user in the format, Magearna. In this case, I went with a physically defensive set to help against Zacian, which is one of the most powerful breakers in the tier. Magearna, pretty standard here, just spikes, Volt Switch, Thunder Wave, and Flare Cannon. I needed a Stealth Rock user, and I settled on Arceus Dragon, since it gave me some kind of fire resist to deal with opposing Chi-Yu. Stealth Rock, Draco Meteor, and Recover are good on this defensive set just to make it not too passive, and Roar is here to phase out any defensive setup Pokemon, but in particular, Espathra is extremely threatening. Next up, I had Cyclizar. I needed some removal of my own, especially since I'm using a non-heavy duty boots Chi-Yu. To make my hazard stack beat the opposing hazard stack, I would need removal. So knockoff to punish the incoming ghost types that would try to spin block, things like Houndstone and Gholdengo. Note that Giratina is banned from this format, so there aren't really any great spin blockers, and none of them are going to like taking a knockoff. Rapid Spin to remove hazards, Shed Tail as a nice pivoting option paired with Regenerator, and Draco Meteor just to have a decently strong stab move if I need to attack. I ended up going with an Iron Defense Mandibuzz to deal with many of the threatening physical setup sweepers in the format. Sneasler, Zacian, and different forms of Swords Dance Arceus made this set seem like a really good move, and it also gave me a solid ground immunity. Now, I did need speed control and something that could hit hard right off the bat, and for that I have Choice Scarf Chi-Yu. Going with pretty standard Choice Scarf set here, modest because timid Choice Scarf is not really necessary, and just Terrifier to power up Overheat and Flamethrower if needed, and lastly, my own spin blocker, Gholdengo. I decided to drop Shadow Ball and just go for Nasty Plot, Psyshock, Make It Rain, and Recover, because I figured in this format I would need Psyshock to deal with bulky, Calm Mind Arceus forms, and I wanted Make It Rain for that incredible 120 base power. Alright, now let's see how those battles went. Right off the bat, I see that we both have teams that are heavy on hazards, but I decide it's worth stacking it up on both sides since I have a Cyclozar and Dorron does not. Early game, the Landorus is very threatening, but I can hold it off for long enough to stack my hazards up with my specially defensive Arceus. My heavy-duty boots Goldengo here also helps out a lot, being able to chip down his team and come in for free. I get spin blocked there, but ultimately it's only a matter of time before I get the rapid spin off with that Zoroark not having heavy-duty boots. Here I try to cripple the Dragonite with Knockoff and Thunder Wave, and ultimately, once it's paralyzed, it can't even reliably answer Goldengo, and I begin my sweep. Unfortunately, this is where I make a crucial mistake, underestimating both the bulk and power of Arceus Fire. Using Recover and Swords Dance, Dorron sets up, oppose my Chi-Yu with the Terra Normal E-Speed, and I unfortunately lose Game 1. The biggest mistake here was not keeping Mandibuzz healthy. Had I known, perhaps there would have been a different outcome. For Game 2, I switch up teams using an NJNP created sample of a Sand Hazard stack. Start off, I try to stack hazards, and after a scary situation early on, I realize that this Goldengo is completely walled by my Garganacl. Once I see that his Mandibuzz reveals Defog, I know I'm in for a very long game. I will spare you guys the 100 plus turn game and cut to the end. Eventually, the Mandibuzz gets chipped down, knocked off, and poisoned, and I'm able to stack hazards. At this point, it's only a matter of time before Dorron's team gets chipped down, and ultimately, I win the game with a Hippowdon sweep. I start off the game by setting Stealth Rocks in Game 3, but unfortunately I notice Dorron has Toxic Spikes. This is extremely threatening, and I'll need to Terra Poison my Mandibuzz to get out of this. A well-placed Terra Ground Zacian starts to really break down my team, and despite a well-placed Terra Poison on my part, I still have to sack 2 Pokemon to get Chi-Yu in without taking Toxic Spikes. Now, I still end up being in a decent position with a against this Dragapult, but I have to predict whether Sucker Punch will come out from Urshifu or not, and unfortunately, I miss the 50-50, ultimately losing the game after Ogerpon Wellspring cleans up the rest of my team. Ultimately, I lose 1-2 to Dorron, but I've got another tier leader to face. We'll start off Game 2 against QBKing as I started off all of my other games, getting up as many hazards as possible. Terra Fairy Chi-Yu threatens out my Arceus Dragon, but it also allows me to set maximum hazards. This time, though, QBKing and I both have Cyclozar. I get red here going into Goldengo and end up losing Goldengo's heavy-duty boots. After sacking Arceus Dragon, though, I'm able to force the Palafin out with the threat of a rapid spin. Once his Houndstone is knocked, he now no longer has a real rapid spin absorber. Goldengo slowly gets the kill on Magearna, but the threatening Chi-Yu enters once again. However, it's taking more and more hazard damage and only has one more entry. Going for a Desperation Rapid Spin with Cyclozar fails, and ultimately I'm able to clean up in the end game with Chi-Yu Dark Pulse, taking Game 1. I start off Game 2 using a Grassy Terrain sample team. Garchomp sets Stealth Rock early on, and then Magearna starts to stack Spikes. Without any real hazard control, it's looking like I'm in a tough spot early on. It quickly becomes evident to me that I don't have a lot of hope for the end game with this many hazards up, and my Rillaboom only has one entry. I'm going to need to make a win with Sneasler. Fortunately, I get the Dire Claw Sleep, which gives me enough turns to Swords Dance, and despite the Terra Normal E-Speed being powerful, it's not quite enough to kill, and I end up finishing game 2 and winning the set with Sneasler. Had a lot of fun playing Uber's UU today, and I think it's worth checking out. I think this tier will be surprisingly relevant, despite the fact that Uber's isn't played a lot and this is Uber's UU. I believe that the getting rid of the upper power levels of Ubers will lead to a really fun and diverse metagame, and I'm especially excited to use a lot of the Arceus forms that have never before seen major usage in actual Ubers. The team I built here will be in the description, as well as the link to the Discord for Uber UU, where you can find a lot of resources like the sample teams, viability rankings, and more. Currently has over 2,000 users, and it's a very active and engaged community. Hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you next time.